The function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. Welcome to the Paid Forward Society, where we believe that leadership is a continuous learning journey and where knowledge is passed on to the next generation of leaders. I'm Roman Jordan. I've been learning and practicing management of global teams for about 10 years. In this podcast, we will explore the many facets of leadership as we talk to inspiring managers, entrepreneurs, coaches, veterans, and athletes who empower their teams and deliver results. Together, we will discover the keys to success through empathy, purpose, and care. So join me as we embark on this journey to become better leaders and create a better world. All right. So, hello, Alison.
Hi, Roman. How are you?
Good. So, I'm so happy to have you on this podcast. We talked about it for a few months now, actually. So, I'm glad that we are able to make it.
I'm so glad to be here. I mean, can you imagine the people in the world who are going to be like, wait, what? Roman and Alison are sitting together?
Probably. We're going to talk about technical stuff, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. All my architecture skills.
All right. So to give a bit of context, so we worked together in a previous company, Riverbed, like Amanda Spencer, that I interviewed in the first episode. Mm-hmm. So again, Riverbed is among us. So we were peers, and you were looking after product marketing, whereas I was on the product evangelism side of things, more on the deep technical aspects, but very complementary to product marketing. That's why we had the opportunity to work together, actually. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to have you on the podcast because in my experience working with you, I saw someone that is super passionate, that leads with empathy. So, that I wanted to discuss about that. And also, I remember when we were discussing with the rest of the, let's say, the managers and leadership team, I remember that you were really keen on taking care of your team, on making sure that they would have opportunities to shine and to grow. So that's definitely something where I believe I can learn from you, and others can learn from you as well. I also witnessed that you have very high standards. So and that you will prepare your talks and other deliverables with a lot of care and even perfectionism to some extent. So
we should talk about that.
Yeah. So this podcast is more about having a conversation. So it's not about perfection. It's more about getting insights in your experience and what you have done and how we can do better as leaders as well, inspired by your journey. Mm-hmm. What is interesting also is that you quitted Riverbed in 2021. And since then, you have been super busy, or at least it looks to me that you have been super busy. You are the co-founder of We Women Lead, a nonprofit organization to demonstrate the power of women. So that would be a very great topic to discuss about. You wrote a book, Lessons in Life and Leadership, based on interviews with 61 women across 22 industries. And you have founded your own company, the Lens Leadership, your activity as a coach for executives and leaders. So I would like to dive deeper on this as well. What is coaching? How we can hire you as a coach? What we can expect from you, and in more general, what can we expect from coaches and in this industry, or at least in this type of role? Mm-hmm. So so there's a lot of topics. There are a lot of topics I'd like to discuss with you. Mm-hmm. But before we dive into it, can you introduce yourself?
I love that. Introduce myself. It's a topic that, oh gosh, I'm going to turn the phone upside down. It's a topic that I think about a lot these days because oftentimes, people expect that when they say introduce yourself, it's all about your career. But the reality is that my life has so many layers to it. And I think where I'm at right now in my life is finally in a place where I'm able to take all the layers of lessons and things that I've learned over a lifetime and bring them to what I'm doing with the Lens Leadership. I started my life in Brooklyn, New York in the early 70s. I've just told everybody how old I am, basically. But Brooklyn in the early 70s was such an important place for me to be. I was, I was born into a community of diversity.
Okay.
I was born into a community of basically, you name it. We had every religion, every background, every ethnicity, every different walk of life, people with disabilities, and all kinds of different people. And I guess as a child, I just was automatically somebody who my foundation was set as someone who saw the world as a global place. We moved to Crete when I was a kid, moved back, Brooklyn, New Jersey, went to school in Miami, lived in Spain for a period of time with a family, lived in Italy for a year in a small town, learned to speak Italian. Really, my global background is just incredibly important to me. And, of course, it expanded when I went to work in the tech industry. But before I went to work in the tech industry, I didn't know I wanted to be in tech. I had no idea. Honestly, I wanted to be an actor. I came out of college, moved to California for 3 years. I was in Los Angeles, wanting to be an actor.
Nice. I didn't know about that.
Yes, I don't talk about that so often, but the reality is, you know me, I must have gotten something from that because presence and speaking, and that's a big strength of mine. And I probably got some of that back in the day. I'll tell you a little secret. Back in the day, that literally, you've never heard this one before.
Okay.
What my first job was as an actor? My first real job, paying job. I was one of those tour bus people at Universal Studios. I think that's where I got my first, public speaking experience.
Okay.
But I went into tech. My family had something to do with the tech industry, and one thing led to another. And somehow I ended up here in San Francisco in the Bay Area. And I was in tech for 26 years in global organizations, Autodesk, Brocade, Cisco for 10 years. Cisco was a humongous part of my learning as a leader about what it is to be a great team member, about what it is to execute some of the biggest projects you could think of, taking a business from 0 to 500 million to $1 billion. Anyway, of course, Riverbed. But as another big part of my life is what happened when I left Riverbed. December of 2020, I was about to be the first woman keynote speaker at Sales Kickoff. And I had to tell the C-level male executives that I was grateful. I'm so excited. Can't wait to carry the torch for all the women. I'm going to make this great. But I'm going for surgery tomorrow and I'm going to be out for a couple of weeks. And I thought I was going to be back. And as it turned out, I was diagnosed with stage 3 endometrial cancer. And I needed to go on LOA and go through the whole thing. I went through chemo, went through radiation, went through a very, very disciplined process to save my hair, which I was successful at. I made a lot of great choices. Also decided I needed to keep my brain active while I was in chemo, and went to Cornell to participate in the executive women's leadership program there, where I met some outstanding women in different industries. And those are the women that I started We Women Lead with. But I decided at that point, I'd really made some very strong choices on my behalf. And I looked back and I said, you know what? Somewhere earlier in my career, there was an executive that said, you're going to own something of your own someday. And I said, it's now or never. And as soon as LOA ended, I left and I decided it's time to go out on my own and start something that is Alison's.
Yeah.
And so I started the Lens Leadership.
That's great. I was not sure you would share that, but I know that I was quite impressed during that time when you were super upfront and you were communicating about it on social media. And I think your energy and was impressive. The fact that you were going through this and willing to. I mean, there was no doubt of you winning against that and going through it and being successful in the end. So I'm glad that you are with us and you are fine and you are able to tell that story with us.
Well, I'll tell you, you said something earlier that I want to go back to, and I'll refer to where I really started working on this trait of mine, and that is the perfectionism trait.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you nailed it. I absolutely have high standards, and I've lived that way forever. When I got cancer, I decided one of the choices I needed to make was to be very vulnerable publicly and show people so that I could teach. I'm a teacher. I love teaching people, and inspiring people.
Yes.
But when I was going through cancer treatment, the only way I could teach was to show physically what I was going through. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I look back, like I get these, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, pop-up pictures that say, oh, this is what you posted 2 years ago today. I did not look my best. I really didn't look my best. I was, bloated from chemo. I saved my hair, but I looked atrocious doing it. But it was so eye-opening to me because I saw how so many people reacted to it. And it wasn't that, oh, I don't look my best, so therefore they're going to react negatively to me. It was quite the opposite. And some of the people that we've worked with through the years, and our former, I'm not going to use names on here, but our former head of sales in Americas, and some people became people that I will always have in my life because of how they reacted to that vulnerability. And I learned that even though so many of us walk through life thinking that we have to be perfect or show ourselves off at perfect, sometimes when we show that we're human, much more powerful things come. And I'll tell you one example of how I practice it today. I know that I post videos on LinkedIn, and I don't know what I'm saying half the time. I know the topic I'm about to talk about, and instead of scrutinizing the video and say, I don't like that, I don't like the way this looks, that looks, I just decide, you know what? Everybody else isn't going to know. They're going to think it's perfect just the way it is. They're not going to know that I've been sitting here scrutinizing the hell out of this video. So just post it anyway.
Okay.
And so it's usually one take and it goes up.
Wow.
In the past, it wouldn't have been that way.
So, why is that important for a leader to show that vulnerability in your mind?
I think it's so important for leaders to show that they are always growing, that they're willing to grow, that they're willing to learn something, that they are willing to be confident in the fact that they bring certain strength. Everybody brings their own strengths to the table, but every single one of us has things we're not great at. And so if we're willing to ask, or we're willing to say, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to find out so that I can help you with that. It's so much more powerful. There's so much more credibility behind that. And there's so much more courage that you show by being willing to say, that's not probably my best strength. I'm going to go find out how to get better at it. Or I'm going to go find somebody to partner with to help me be better at that.
So that's a great segue to a question I wanted to ask you. Your headline on LinkedIn says, developing confident, influential, and inspired global leaders with courage, positivity, and presence. So there's a lot to unpack here, but I think it's super interesting. So let's follow up with courage. I mean, why is that important for a leader to demonstrate that that people need to be brave?
Courage is about growth. You know, the theme, when I looked at the 61 women who are represented in the book, Lessons in Life and Leadership, and I will correct you and say, I don't think I wrote that book. I published the book. I produced the book. And I produced the book from idea to Amazon in 33 days.
Wow.
And that's, I think, the coolest story about the book. But when I looked at the lessons that each of the 61 women gave me to represent in the book, the biggest theme that I saw was always be learning. Growth mindset isn't just a couple words that we like to throw around. Growth mindset is being willing to roll up your sleeves, get uncomfortable, find new pathways, new opportunities, to expose opportunities to, try new things, learn, somebody else's perspective, which is a big thing for me these days. I mean, it's always been a big thing, but maybe at some point we'll get to the story behind that. Ask somebody else to lead a meeting. Listen. Sometimes courage is just the ability to sit and listen to somebody else and understand where they're coming from and shut our mouths and just try to understand where somebody else is coming from, as hard as that can be.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the workplace or whether it's in politics or whether it's in life. I got to tell you, I have some of the most incredibly interesting stories about in the last, year and a half, really, about how I've grown by being courageous enough to not know it all. Finally. I mean, I think I've sat in rooms with you where I have known it all.
Yeah.
But something clicked. And maybe, it was this big, huge life lesson called, I'm going to deal the healthiest person I know, cancer, and see what she does with it. But if we have the courage to understand that every single person that we meet has something amazing to offer that can enhance what we bring to the table, powerful.
So let's be practical here. So I lead a team. How do I do that? Because I feel that there is this maybe imaginary, or in our common imagination, we expect from leaders that they are leading, that they are demonstrating that they have the answers, that they have, they can push the team in the right direction and so on. So you talk about vulnerability, talk about courage. How do we do that practically? I mean, so in the team setup, we have a meeting. What are the steps to make that happen? I mean, it's a process for sure, but I want to make sure that we understand how we can do that.
We get into this practice of telling people a lot of things.
Yes.
Instead of asking people for their perspective. The other word that I like to stand on a lot these days is the idea of curiosity. So even if we're in a team meeting, how can we come into the room with a level of curiosity? Everybody. How can we, encourage everybody to stand in a place of curiosity and ask, what do you think about that? What's your perspective? How do you think that would work? All open-ended questions that give members of a team an opportunity to feel included and feel like their ideas matter, I think that's the first step. There's very practical things that you can do to help people feel like, even if you don't use every single idea that somebody puts on the table, there's ways that we can start to articulate that, yes, and okay, so yes, I hear your idea. And what if we added this to it?
Yeah. Okay.
Instead of, and obviously I've been a culprit of this, instead of just shutting everybody down because their idea isn't my idea.
Yeah.
Curiosity is so powerful. When we can lead with curiosity, it's incredible the doors that open, the world that expands. I'll tell you a story. This is a fun story.
I love stories.
You're on a certain social media platform with me, and I usually tell people, please do not join that social media platform because it's like my testing ground for everything. And back in November, there was a guy that I don't know, for some reason, I guess I was following him or we were following each other. All I knew about him was I saw tweets from occasionally. His picture, represented him. He was an African American guy, and he said something about. He tweeted something, and I noticed he tweeted something about, how you work for AWS. How Jeff Bezos has that humanitarian award?
Yes.
He said something derogatory about the fact that Van Jones was given the humanitarian award, and he said something about how he should have given the whole thing to Dolly Parton. Okay. I thought that was interesting coming from him. And personally, I loved some of the things I've seen from Van Jones in the last several years and how courageous they have been. And so I personally had the opinion that it was merited. But I was curious, and so I tweeted back and I asked, why do you feel that way? I'm interested to understand, as an African American man, why do you feel that way? And he started to kind of laugh it off a little bit because he had a strong opinion about it, and it went back and forth. And I finally decided this can't be done in a certain number of characters. I haven't said what platform it is, but now we know. So I went into the DMs and I sent him a note and I said, hey, would you like to have a conversation on Zoom about it? I'd love to meet you and just understand a little bit more of your perspective. And he said to me, absolutely. But I need to tell you something. I have ALS and I speak using ocular technology through a computer. Is that weird to you?
It's the language.
It's Lou Gehrig's disease. It makes, it shuts down your muscles and your ability to utilize your muscles.
Okay.
And he, and so do you think that would be weird for you? And I said, I paused and I said, gosh, I haven't had that kind of a conversation before, but let's do it. And so his name is Chris. And a couple weeks later, Chris and I had an 1.5-hour conversation on Zoom where he used ocular technology to talk to me. And it was so eye-opening, no pun intended. It was so eye-opening for me. And he's probably going to be listening to this, but we looked at each other and he looked into my eyes but he was typing using his eye movements into his, computer. And it was like, it wasn't like I'm waiting and then I'll listen to what the computer has to say. It was watching his eyes and some of his facial expressions while he was typing. That's when he was talking. even though I didn't hear the words yet. And it was just such a beautiful connection with another human being that was so new to me. But we became just lifelong friends in an hour and a half conversation because of that curiosity. And I will always be able to go to him, and I talk to him all the time now. But if we choose, whether it's in business or any other part of life, curiosity over judgment, a world of opportunities, a world of so many amazing things can open up to us.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sure you're listening, so I just wanted to tell your story a little bit. He's awesome, and he's my age, and I mean, and I will tell you, it's funny because, as we continue to chat, he shared with me, he lives down in Southern California, that he auditioned for the Cosby Show back in the 80s.
Wow.
And, he was plucked out of basically being a Marine, university, and given, this diagnosis, and his whole life changed. But he's an incredibly positive and uplifting person. He is a writer. He's written several books. He's brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. Wow. What you said about curiosity remind me of a discussion I had with Conigliaro-Hubbard in a previous episode of the podcast, where basically, I mean, I know she's super curious. She is super inclusive. And she also recognized that she is very extrovert, and the way of integrating people in the conversation was not always the best, because she would have the mic, for example, and then she would pass on the mic to the person, but the person would be maybe introvert, and we freak out actually. Mm-hmm. So how do we make that positive, inclusive experience for people where we can demonstrate that curiosity, but also make those people safe?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I think you got to first start by asking them. For example, one of the ideas that I like for creating an inclusive team is giving other people an opportunity to lead a meeting. This week you're going to lead a meeting. Next week you're going to lead the meeting. You figure out what the topic's going to be. And so if there's somebody who's introverted on the team, ask them, how would you like to approach that? Give them the opportunity to share.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe obviously they're a member of the team. It's not that they're going to just be quiet, but give them that platform and say, hey, you own it. You can create this meeting however you want to on behalf of our team's goals.
Yeah.
It can look, like a whiteboard session. It can look like a big, boisterous speech, whatever it is. The rules are you lead the meeting and you include the rest of the team. It gives permission. It gives permission to people, but you got to ask them first. Like, how would you like to approach that?
I like that. I think there's an expression in English which is throwing someone under the bus, which is quite negative. And sometimes I wonder whether putting those people in that situation is actually throwing them under the bus, because they may not be at ease when they are asked to lead. Maybe if that's 2 or 3 people, that's okay. But if it is a bigger group, how do they feel about that? So how can we make it? I mean, you said I give you permission, but how can we make it safe for those people?
Well, it starts with asking somebody how they feel about it and respecting what their answer is. If they are somebody who just doesn't really in any way, shape, or form feel comfortable with that, be okay with that.
Okay.
And they don't have to take the turn unless they do feel comfortable, or maybe they want to wait until the end. Be okay with it. Give them that permission. It's like saying to somebody, you have to go back to the office from COVID because the company said so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. But what if we articulated it, we'd like for employees to start coming back to the office. And for you who are, you've only worked outside of the office, you're 23 years old. Let me help you understand how this can be valuable to your career. We have to start to, treat people like human beings.
Yes.
and again, listen for understanding, not just judgment.
There's a very good book that I'm reading at the moment from David Marquet. I don't know whether you know David Marquet. He wrote Turn the Ship Around, a great book about leadership. Mm-hmm. So he was the commander on the submarine. Mm-hmm. And this second book that I'm reading at the moment is called Leadership is Language. And he's making exactly the same case where mm-hmm. you need to tell people and treat people differently. I mean, it's not the blue collar versus the white collar anymore, where you would have the white collar saying, okay, you do this, and, mm-hmm. Blue collar would do the stuff in the factory. So we are in a different age. So we need to adapt our language. We need to be more inclusive and have this feedback loop process between the different teams and hierarchy. So
and know that every single person, no matter what their role is, has something great to offer.
Yes.
And that's, again, back to the curiosity thing. Every single person that works for a company, it doesn't matter what their role is. Leadership isn't a title. Leadership is how you approach things. Leadership is how you inspire other people. It's how you acknowledge, it's the confidence in understanding these are my strengths. And somebody else has another set of strengths. And I'm going to go find out what they are. 'Cause, I think, I like sports. I'm a big sports person. So, I always love the analogy to championship teams. Mm-hmm. You don't have 11 quarterbacks on the offense of an American football team. You have a quarterback, a running back, a tight end, a couple of wide receivers, and an offensive line, maybe a halfback, that you have to leverage the strengths that each and every person brings to the team in order to make that touchdown. Mm-hmm. You can't have 11 quarterbacks and actually think that you're going to win a game or win the best way you can.
So I'm not familiar yet with U.S. football, although I've been here for 6 years. But I still need to have your.
We can have a whiteboard session on that.
We should do that. Yeah.
I have to tell you that I started. I'm not a big, the other football, soccer. I'm not hugely knowledgeable about it, except for Ted Lasso. But I did start to look it up last week because I'm talking to a company, with team members across Europe. And we were talking about this analogy, but I know I need to put it into European football terms.
Or rugby, maybe.
Or rugby, or cricket, or something like that.
Yeah, cricket is not that popular in Europe. It's more in India or Australia. Yeah. Good. All right. So, so we talked about courage. We talked about curiosity. If I go back to your headline, you say also positivity.
Positivity.
So, yeah. How is that important for a leader?
I think it comes down to perspective. There's a lot of, I'm not sure I'm coming up with an example off the top of my head, but there's so many things that happen to us in the course of a given day that we treat as a fact, but they're not really a fact. They're just something that we choose a perspective on. We can choose to look at something negatively, or we can choose a completely different way of looking at it. And when we look at something from a positive perspective, we can change the entire outcome of a situation.
I think
let's say
best example.
Here's, were you going to give an example?
It's yours. Your example going through cancer.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of positivity and driving the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly,
totally. I definitively chose the perspective I was going to take and how I was going to approach every single day. But let's just bring it to a very easy workplace situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at work, we have relationships. And sometimes we don't like, something somebody says to us. And we can sit there and say, oh, he's a jerk. Oh, he just doesn't treat people well. Or we can step back and say, what's going on for him that he decided to say it that way? Maybe something's going on for him. I'm just going to let that roll off my shoulders and we'll come back to it another time. You see, it's two completely different perspectives. And there's not two perspectives. There's many different perspectives we can take in any situation. But there's a difference. I get up on a stage and my perspective is usually a very inspiring one.
Mm-hmm.
I am usually going to connect with the audience and be very vivacious and engaging. But not everybody is, a public speaker. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking, and they'll get up on a stage and have a little bit less vivacious approach. Who do you think's going to connect with the audience? Usually the one that is looking into people's eyes, usually the person who is telling stories that are memorable. That's another way we can look at, perspective and positivity.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what you said earlier about curiosity. It requires curiosity to see that positivity. Mm-hmm. The fact that you understand people and why that person was not in fact a jerk. They maybe acted as a jerk, but maybe there's a background.
It also requires a sense of pause. And that's not something that's common these days in this world. I see this every day. I talk to people about this every day. This world where we're go, do, more. What we fail to recognize most of the time is that if we were to pause for 10 seconds in the heat of something and just notice what's going on around us, or just ask ourselves, what else could be going on instead of the judgment I'm about to make? We can change the course of an entire meeting. We can change the course of, an entire project, whatever we're doing, if we actually paused and connected with what's really going on around us.
Yeah. It's funny because I saw a post on LinkedIn, a comment that you made this morning or yesterday, I can't remember. I saw this morning saying that, we are always rushing. Why don't we take the time? Why don't we take the, and that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast as well. I like the long format so we can discuss in depth instead of having a quick 10, 15 minutes, 20-minute discussion and then move on to the next topic. I like to, so thank you for being available and being with us for maybe more than 1 hour, and we'll see how it goes. But clearly having the time to discuss and reflect on things. I think it's super important. We have a leadership principle at Amazon, which is called frugality. And many people think about of frugality like, we need to cut expenses. But what the leadership principle is about is more about prioritization and making sure you take the time. We have a tendency to take on too much of things, and I keep telling my team about that. And there is a sense of, I think the lean philosophy is all about that. I mean, you should not stress a system to 100% of their capacity, because otherwise you have too much wait time, and you won't able to act. So you need to basically operate at 70% of your capacity to be able to be super efficient.
I 100% believe. I agree with that, and that does align with what we're talking about. It's amazing what happens if you are somebody who go all day long, which of course I've been that person, but you start to create a habit where you find opportunities to slow down during the course of the day and reflect. Everything else that you're doing miraculously improves.
Yeah.
Including your interactions with other people, including whatever projects you're working on, because you can see more clearly when you can kind of empty that container of all the clutter in your head. You can be more creative. You can, care more about the people around you as opposed to just worrying about what you're going to do next.
It's funny. We talked about return to the office, and that's something I think that was good about the time in the office. I mean, COVID time, we're super busy with Zoom meetings. I mean, you would do Zoom for the full day, and actually, you would look at what you have done during the day and say, wow, I've not done anything. I've not produced anything. I've been in meetings all day long. For what?
Yeah.
And just because we had to connect, and there were maybe not many options at that time. And now that we are reconsidering going back to the office, I think this was something I really enjoyed about being in the office, that you had time to slow down, actually, surprisingly. You could meet someone in the hallway and discuss about something that you did not expect, something that was not planned, and being curious, being open with this mindset, you could benefit a lot. You could maybe have an idea for a new product or a new way of supporting your customers, anything.
Well,
or
we're
improving.
sitting in a room with whiteboards right now, and something I miss dearly is the opportunity to map out different pathways. And a lot of us are visual people, so to sit at a whiteboard with somebody, it's like, at least for those of us who are in and around the tech space, but probably most industries.
Yeah, I think it is for most industries. When I look at my friends in different industries, they need to meet and agree on how we're going to do things, and maybe challenge each other. And it's a very different setup when you do that remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't have a choice, and that's fine. But if you have the opportunity to do it, in person, that's great. I'm not advocating for a return to the office as the strict rule. I think there are different type of activities, and we discussed that before I pressed the record button. I think there are some phases of ideation, brainstorming, where having that diversity of perspective and it is super beneficial. It's not you working at home that is going to invent a new way of doing things. Mm-hmm. You will probably have good ideas, but your idea would be much more powerful with others.
Oh,
and
Completely.
and the way of doing that in person is much more powerful than virtually, I guess.
I'm a big fan. I mean, I'm a big fan. I think I don't want to just have this be a conversation where it says, "Oh, we must all flock back."
No.
I don't think you do either. But if we do have that conversation where companies want people to come back to the office, I mean, again, it's important to help everybody understand why, for them, not for the company, for them as an individual, whatever age group they're in, whatever type of role they're in, why that could be, whatever goals they have, why that could be beneficial to them. I spend a lot of time with Gen Z professionals, and we all think that they just don't want to come back to the office, or it's not actually true. I did a focus group with a wide variety of Gen Z professionals across the country. In January, have been doing some work with Gen Z professionals. A lot of them recognize, that they have missed out by not being around people in person. But you see, the companies are usually articulating it to them and saying, you come back or else. It almost sounds like a veiled threat, as opposed to, hey, this is what you could get by coming back.
Yeah. And we're going to track your badge scan and everything. So it's coercive. It's not inclusive at all.
Well, it goes back to that language thing you were talking about with the author that you're reading. Leadership is a language.
Yes.
We can bring something else to mind, but we can be the same exact person approaching the same problem, but coming from a different tone of voice, using different language, and we can get a completely different result. I spend a lot of time with women leaders too. And this is something that I think about a lot. Oftentimes we get trapped in this place of, we're right, those men, they need to be different. And if they're not different, we're going to just fight. Granted, some of the behavior, unconscious bias that exists stinks. But is it going to change overnight? Probably not. So what we can do is recognize, what's our objective in this situation that I'm in? What's my goal? Okay, how do I meet them where they are? How do I meet that man where they are in this conversation so that ultimately I can get what I want out of it? Because that's really all that matters. And so if I kick and scream and, and show my frustration, it's not always going to work out the way I want it to. But if I consider, all right, what's the language I need to use in this meeting in order to get what I want out of it from these men? It's an important consideration. I can create influence.
Yes. So we're going to talk about influence, but I want to stay on this topic of women in tech, women in leadership positions. How can we men make a more inclusive environment for women to thrive? Because I hear what you're saying, and I think you are probably right. There is a need for both sides to adapt their language. Although I don't know whether women have to do it all the way. I'd like to understand how we can also meet you, halfway, and make a better environment for women.
And by the way, I really need to make sure that everybody doesn't think that I just said, women, you just need to be like men.
Yeah.
It's really just about knowing what your goals are in a situation and going after them, and not worrying about, if a man is being, misogynistic or whatever at that particular moment in time. You can always choose to go somewhere else, but, rise to the occasion and get what you want.
Okay.
For the men who want to try. It goes back to the simple, topics of learn to be a better listener. Learn to be better at curiosity. And be courageous enough not to be right. Be courageous enough to know that women may have a different natural style than you. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. And so what can you as a man get from making the effort to understand it better?
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier, you're going to get more done integrating a team than you are just thinking about how to solve something on your own.
Yeah.
So again, if I've got 5 white men in a room, it's kind of like having 5 white quarterbacks on a team. Don't I want a quarterback, a running back, a great offensive line, a tight end, and some wide receivers?
Mm-hmm.
These are simple topics if we really think about them. But we're not spending enough time trying to understand the strengths that everybody brings to the table. We're just sitting back and saying, this is easy for me because I know how to do it this way.
Yes.
So we have to be curious and we have to be courageous.
Yes.
And we have to listen. And if we don't understand, we have to ask. I'm not sure I'm following you. Help me understand that a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take the time to do that. And if we do take the time to do that, I'm pretty sure things are going to change for the better.
Yes. Yeah. I think I want to expand a bit the conversation. To diversity and all type of. So we talk about women, obviously, but there are different ethnicity. There are different. There are people coming from a different background. So
Sure.
I think there's a lot of. I believe that now people understand the value of diversity. I feel that people. So hopefully, I feel that people are lacking ways to implement that in an authentic way. Not saying not quotas, for example.
Yeah.
Saying I need a black person. I need an Asian person. It's not that. But how can you make that environment? How do you build that in a very authentic way, and not built I'm looking for my word, but something that would be fake.
It's too bad that is the definition of diversity and inclusion to so many companies. Let me hit some quotas. Let me show my numbers of how many this person and that person and this person that I have. It comes down to, and it has to happen top down. Can't happen bottom up. Too many of these ERGs, being implemented just to say we have ERGs instead of
ERGs, employee,
the resource groups.
Okay, yeah.
But it has to happen top down. The executive level staff, the board, have got to say, this is how we're going to operate.
Mm-hmm.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We're not just going to hire. We're not just going to figure out how to hire and figure it out. Don't say they don't exist. There's plenty of engineering schools out there, or engineering students out there in traditional Black universities or whatever. You may not have practiced going into those universities to hire before, but give it a shot. Try something new. Step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You got to make a concerted effort to say, I'm going to lead by example, and it's going to filter through my organization at first. It may not look completely authentic, but the executive teams need to say, hey, we get that if we start to bring in teams of people from all different perspectives and backgrounds, we're going to get so much more. We're going to have so many more interesting ideas that come to the table. Our company is going to thrive if we just start to lay this groundwork.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen unless it happens from the top. It can't just happen in a little pool of people that care. I remember, I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to try really hard not to throw anybody under any buses. The real meaning of the word, I'll tell you that. I was part of an ERG one time, and the then CEO of the company said, want this group to do a big presentation to the executive team about what they've found around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And that the group was made up of all different kinds of people around the world in the company who really wanted to participate in this and put a lot of energy into it. And the executive team kept pushing off the meeting. Then the meeting was going to happen, and it went from an hour to 30 minutes. Then the meeting got pushed off. And the last I knew of it, it ended up becoming a 5-minute meeting. Can they just give me the information in 5 minutes because I want to use it for the company meeting the next day?
All right.
Okay, that's not diversity, equity, and inclusion.
No. That's a tick in a box.
It's ticking a box. It's pretty offensive, to be honest with you. So it has to start from the top down. Culture starts from the top down.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with that, and I also believe in ownership. And I think I don't have to wait for the top-down decision to happen to make it happen. So I've been struggling with this for a while. Specifically when I was in Switzerland, it was super difficult to have diversity. It's a small country anyway. But even in the US, when I open position, I would always get the same profiles for sure when they applied. And so yes, there are studies that are showing that you need to incorporate more inclusive words in the way you put together your job descriptions. So I worked on that. Didn't help really. So what I really found is that my LinkedIn network is mostly comprised of people like me, and people outside of that network would not see what I'm posting, whenever I'm like trying to recruit people, and they would not know that we are hiring for those positions. They wouldn't know what those roles are. So I've spent a lot of time actively looking for people in different communities, and looking and so I am probably in a privileged environment or type of role, because the people that we are. I mean, I am a developer advocate, so we're looking for people that are, active in the community and sharing their technical knowledge and so on. So it's easier to find people and to understand. Oh, they look to have the right profile, so I can engage with them and have an assessment. But I've seen also other type of roles where people would not be that visible, and I had to go deep and to find them. And I'm glad I did it, because I found great talents, to be honest. And it's not a quota type of exercise at all. I don't have quota. We don't have quota for that. Luckily, I would say. because that would be a very wrong behavior in my mind. But and I think yeah, I mean, you need to demonstrate ownership to make this happen, and go, build a team that you want to have, and not just wait for people to just apply, because you will have the usual suspects applying to your positions.
Well, I mean, you remind me of a saying that I took from some leadership work I did about, I don't know how old I am anymore, 30 something years ago. And the saying is, if it's to be, it's up to me. Granted, at the corporate level, if a company is going to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion, it has to happen top down.
Yes.
But you can control you.
Yeah.
And if you have a value that says, I need to create a life of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or I need to have a diverse team of people around me, then it's up to you to create it.
Mm-hmm.
And you take the responsibility in uncovering those rocks and finding ways to create it in a place where it seems like it's not immediately available. Yeah, if it's to be, it's up to me. I have a value system that says I have to, and this started back in Brooklyn. It really did. It said, I have to. I feel like I'm missing something if I don't have different people from different backgrounds around me.
Yeah.
I really feel like I'm missing something. I mean, I went from incredibly diverse Brooklyn in the early 70s to living in, very white New Jersey, middle class, upper middle class community. I saw the difference. It was very evident to me, but I feel a little suffocated when I'm not around people that have different ideas and different kinds of perspectives and backgrounds. And so, I have taken it upon myself to make sure that I have a lot of different kinds of people around me.
Yeah. That's good.
It's up to each one of us.
Yeah. And you have a good post on LinkedIn about your story in Brooklyn.
Yeah. I noticed that you liked that this morning. I posted that quite some time ago.
Yeah. No, but
yeah, but that's the
I realized I did not liked it before, but I read it. I remember I read it a while ago, but yeah. So the going back to your headline again, LinkedIn. Developing confident, influential. Let's talk about influence. I think that's a topic I wanted to discuss with you, and I know that you have developed that, executive influence. So, can you tell us more about that? How do you do this?
I'll tell you a story that made influence and how to influence come to life for me. I think there were a lot of natural tendencies that I had. I think I'm just very direct. I'm willing to look somebody in the eye. I'm willing to be wrong, or, sometimes I, take some risks, and sometimes I get slapped in the face for them. It's okay. But George Floyd, when that happened, I think, is when I started to really understand influence better. And here's why. I think I wore this Brooklyn thing as a badge of honor my entire life, and I'm proud of it, sure. But I also kind of wore this idea of, seeing people the way I saw people as this is the way everybody's supposed to be. And I expected them to be that way. But the thing is that I noticed everybody wasn't that way. And that's okay. Because guess what? I was born with a lens that, there's a picture on my LinkedIn right now of my nursery school class, and, there's black and white and brown and pink and blue and all different kinds of people. But not everybody was born in the same place I was. And in order for me to connect with another human being that has a different background, I need to meet them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be curious, again, a lot of same themes, but I need to be curious enough to meet somebody where they are, as difficult as that may be. Obviously, in this political climate we've been in the last, 7-8 years in the US, it's hard sometimes. But I'm making, ever since George Floyd, I've made a stronger effort to ask curious questions and try to understand where somebody's coming from so that I can stand a little bit in their shoes and see the world through their lens. And this goes to business too. Where was I good in my tech career? I was good at relating to sellers. I was great at relating to customers. I was great at relating to partners. Why? I had actually worked in those roles in different parts of my career. I could stand in their shoes and see their perspective. I had worked with BUs and with corporate marketing organizations, so I could see the perspective of product marketing. I could see the perspective of corporate marketing, or product management, and corporate marketing. And I was able to use an empathetic approach to create, and to curiously get an understanding of all of these different groups in an organization in order to speak their language.
Mm-hmm.
And when I could speak their language and I showed them that I had integrity around what I was what I could help them with, that trust built, that
Yes.
influence built. I was invited to their meetings where most people in my role weren't. It's the same thing, whether you're inside a business or whether you're outside in life. To create influence, you need to make an attempt to care enough to stand in the shoes of somebody else and see the world through their lens. And by the way, that's why I called the business the lens leadership, because everybody has their own lens. And if we could just learn to try on different lenses in our life, the world expands.
Yeah. So I know that you are working with young individuals, young professionals to develop networks. So I think it's related to networking and influence. I think they are very related. I mean, earning
Mm-hmm.
trust is probably the first step,
Mm-hmm.
but then you need to nurture that that relationship, that partnership. How do you do that in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. It's the same thing I've been saying the whole time. Curious connection. There's a difference between networking that we do by nature when we're probably in our 20s, 30s. We go to, we go out. I did this, many in EMC world, but for those who know what that is, but you go out drinking, fly by night relationships, this and that. Those are fine. But where do we build the real lasting relationships? In the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
In the trenches, when we ask somebody, how was your day? What do you enjoy doing? What do you care about? What was it like having that conversation? I'm making these things up. But when I care enough to focus outward at another individual, learn a little bit more about what's important to them, not what project they're working on, what's important to them. Those are the types of conversations, connections that make our relationships last. I'm very proud of the relationships when I was a product marketing leader in the last company that we were at, I did EBCs from time to time.
Yes.
I still have relationships with every single one of those customers. Southern Brazil, the UK, Dubai, Minnesota. I could think of so many of them. I have relationships with customers from back in the early days of Cisco building the Andiamo team, because I spent time caring about them as people, not just trying to shove products through them. Ultimately, they all bought the products. But they buy from people they care about. They buy from people that they trust. They buy from people who they know care about them and who are going to be there, who are reliable. So you got to create those relationships in order to create lasting networks. Now, I did a networking event I called it a networking experience with young professionals a couple of weeks ago, and it went phenomenally well. I have not gone live on LinkedIn about it yet, but I've got a bunch of quotes that will go out at some point. I taught them systematically an approach that will help them build those lasting connections. And what they did in that session was they went into breakouts and they practiced it. What I asked them to do, and I'm not going to tell you everything, all my secrets now, but I asked them to try this on. You might get to the end of this session and say, I'm not sure exactly what I got, but if you go practice it for a month, you're going to look back and see exactly what you got. Every single one of them left there feeling like they got something new.
That's the feedback I got as well.
You did?
Yeah.
Nice. Actually, yes, you did. You had somebody there. And, I happen to know that person, had made a really interesting connection in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Glad to hear. So so I understand building the relationship. I think what I've some of the people in my audience, if I can say that, said that
in your audience.
Yeah. No, I mean, what I want to build is a community. So in the community, they ask question about how do you influence executives. So I understand. I mean, from what you said, it sounds like this is a great recipe to build relationship with peers, with the different teams, with so you said BU, so business units, so where we develop products, where you can develop also relationship with customers. But how do you do that with the top level executives? Because you have stronger opinions on where the business should go. How do you drive those ideas? How do you influence them so you can get what you think is the right thing to do for the business?
It's not that different.
Customers? Okay.
It's not that different. We all put our pants on the same way in the morning. We do. We all do a lot of human things. And just because somebody has a title and a certain level of responsibility does not make them different. Then, we have the ability to get curious about what's important to them.
Yeah.
If we understand what's important to, a senior executive, then we know, and we know our strengths, then we can start to show them how we can help them get to their goals. It's as simple as that. I built really strong relationships. I built really strong relationships with a lot of senior executives, but I remember really one of the things that I would do kind of naturally that I didn't really see anybody else doing over the years, whether it was at Cisco or at Riverbed, was we sold to CIOs and their teams.
Yes.
Well, why the heck wasn't anybody sitting down with our own CIO and asking him his perspective? And so I would always sit down with the CIO and various senior people on the CIO's team to understand how they thought. What was their perspective? What did their data center look like? What did their cloud environment look like? What did their infrastructure look like? What were their peers talking about? It was like my first stop to be curious with them and understand their world before I sat there and went out, to have those conversations with customers.
I remember that.
Oh, by the way, one of those people had a son at the event 2 weeks ago because we built that close of a relationship and that much trust because I cared about his business and I cared to make him look good and I cared to, show off the great things they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can just start to see people as people, not, the roles that they
Functions.
play,
Yeah.
and get curious and see how we can be helpful, focus outward instead of at ourselves. The influence happens.
Yeah.
They want us, or, think about it. Who do you want around you? People who are going to help you.
How do you develop the confidence as a leader? I mean, we talk about curiosity, positivity, how to influence, but how do you become confident that you can do this?
If you're not automatically confident, it takes practice, like any other thing that we're trying to learn.
Yeah.
Some people are lucky enough that they had parents who knew to say, you can do anything. You can do anything. We all have so many different trials and tribulations in our life. So no matter where you're at, it's really about creating new habits. And so the best way I can say to develop confidence is to start to understand what your strengths are and really, get personally curious about what are my strengths? What do my strengths bring to the table? Number one. Number two, take risks. Try new things. Try something tomorrow that you would immediately say, no, that's not for me. I can't do that. That's too hard. I'm too busy. Stop with that language.
Mm-hmm.
Go try something new anyway. In August of this past year, I don't even know if you know this. Maybe we've talked about it, but I'm in this big kick to learn a million new things. And I got an email from School of Rock in San Rafael. And I don't know how I saw this email. It must have been fate, but because I throw away a lot of emails. And I opened it and I literally picked up the phone and I said, what's the coolest instrument I could learn? And the next week I was in my first drum lesson. And now I can actually play AC/DC, Back in Black, and Deacon Blues from Steely Dan. I'm working on a Metallica song right now.
Wow.
And the school is trying to get me to agree to be in one of the bands. I mean, this is last August. Again, the more steps that we take, I just have so much joy in those classes every week. The more steps that we proactively take to try new things and experience the world and go engage with a different culture or try a new food. I think I had uni for the first time the other day.
Uni?
I never had sea urchin before.
Okay.
I love sushi, but I've never had sea urchin before. And I was out with a prospective client and we went to his favorite sushi place in San Francisco. And all of a sudden I had this thing of uni in front of me. And I said, God, am I finally going to be trying this thing? And I did. Do I want it again? Not sure I do, but I've had it now.
Okay.
All these years of wondering, what is that thing? Confidence comes as we create new experiences for ourselves, as we step outside of our box, try new things, whether we fall on our face or not, we learn something.
Yes. I think, again, I'm going to quote an Amazon leadership principle, which is our leaders are right a lot. It doesn't mean that we know everything. It means that we need to, we have developed an habit of trying and doing stuff, and that brings you the confidence to build stuff and to decide. And you need to have that curiosity to go deep and make sure that those are the right thing to do. And I like this leadership principle because it's basically what you said. It's about being confident, about to have the courage to go out there, and also to look at different perspective, because you are right a lot, because you are changing yourself, and you are and by listening to others and asking others questions that are going to shake maybe your beliefs and get a different perspective. So I think it encapsulates what you said.
What you're bringing to mind is there's a difference between confidence and cockiness.
Yeah.
Confidence is outwardly focused.
Mm-hmm.
Cockiness is ego focused. There's a difference.
Yeah. I agree with that. I want to switch gears a bit. I mean, you mentioned that earlier. You are big into sports.
Mm-hmm.
So what can we learn from leadership? Or what can we learn from sports about leadership?
Everything. I mean, like I said, I gave my favorite analogy earlier, but it's really the way, you watch championship sports teams. I have some preferred teams myself, but you watch championship sports teams, and usually most of the time, the way that they win is by unifying all of the skills that each person brings to the table, including the coaching staff, at just the right time in order to take something over the finish line. Usually it's not an imbalanced approach where you've got, an ego over here and an ego over there, and they're all about me. You see more championship teams that are all about the next guy.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to watch it. I will use an example, a little bit different sports example that happens to be from my personal favorite team, and that's the New York Football Giants. I have a lifelong New York Football Giants fan, but back in 2007, 2007, the Super Bowl 42 team. Going into that year, the year before, there was a lot of chaos on the team. There were people that left. Tiki Barber left. Mike Strahan was incredibly frustrated about a lot of things. Tom Coughlin had a personality. I'm going to tell you who that is, Roman.
Yeah, please.
Tom Coughlin was the head coach.
Okay.
He had a personality that was rubbing some people the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
It was his way or the highway, and there were frustrations. They went into the off season, and Tom Coughlin looked more inwardly. Who do I need to be to create a different result? The accountability. And so he really looked at, how am I being to create the results that I am, and how do I need to shift the way I'm being to create a different result? It's like turning a ship you talked about earlier.
Yeah. It's
an analogy I've used for many, many years, this idea of turning a big, huge ship in a different direction. You can't just keep doing the same thing.
No.
So he changed his approach, and he created a listening loop where he elected captains to come spend time with him on a regular basis to share his ideas with their different components of the team, to also give feedback to him on a regular basis that he would listen to, and he would implement new things within the organization so that the team came together as a much more unified group of men. One thing led to another. As Coach Coughlin changed his approach, all of a sudden there became this unity within the organization. And, even when they lost a couple games, all of a sudden they started to become these road warriors who trusted each other and fixed the little pieces along the way of this next season. And all of a sudden, this team that was struggling became the team to watch. And all of a sudden, this team, beat the almighty Patriots in the Super Bowl. Nobody expected that. But no matter what we know, no matter how smart we are, no matter what title we have, we all have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to take a look at ourselves, ask ourselves, what results am I creating? Are these the results I want? What results am I creating for my team? Are these the results I want? What's standing in my way between here, where I am now, and the results that I want? It's interesting. I have something going out on LinkedIn tomorrow about this very topic. I do. It's really funny that it should come up. But Tom Coughlin, as the coach of that team, saw that he wanted a different result. And he looked at himself and said, it starts with me.
Mm. Yeah.
It was very powerful. There's so many examples of how sports emulates success in anything in life, because we, whether it's a family or whether it's a business, we have teams in life. We're all trying to accomplish something somewhere, and there's a great correlation to sports. And I just love, the example sports sets for all of us if we look closely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good example. It starts with me. And actually, the book Turn the Ship Around is exactly that. David Marquette realized that the way he was operating as a captain, commander, I can't remember exactly his title, but was not the right way. He would not succeed if he was doing the same thing all over again. So it took on him to reflect and have more an inclusive, language, and demonstrating more curiosity, and that's how he was able to raise his team from the lowest, to the greatest in the Navy. So that was very inspiring. That's a very inspiring story.
I wrote down the name of that book because it sounds like something that I would like to read, actually. It sounds like my kind of a book. And it's fascinating, actually. You could have a coach, I'll go back to Tom Coughlin, who's brilliant, and he's just a good man, and somebody who's inspiring. But if you go in and you see that you have success in one run and you get to the Super Bowl, it doesn't mean that exact same approach is going to work the next year. Mm-hmm. So it's important for us to always have that room to check in with ourselves and say, hey, did something change? What changed in the environment? Is this exact same approach going to work, with this new team or with this new situation? We always have to check back in with ourselves and ask those questions again. What results do I want? Am I getting them? What's standing in the way between where I am today and those results?
That's a very good point. I mean, I failed as a manager because I used the same recipe from a previous team where we have been super successful in a new team that was going to lead, and for different reasons it didn't work. Because of the environment, because of the profile of the people, and so on. And I failed to recognize that I had to check in and make sure that. So I was, I was successful. So why not again? And there was a failure on my side. So good lesson learned and good call out.
Yeah, I mean, same. Have I always been a great manager of people? No way, Jose. No. But the great news is I look back at the experiences where I fell on my face, and I've learned something from them, and I know that I try it differently next time.
Yeah, which I did, and I'm glad. So but it's not easy indeed. It's I think you said that earlier. I mean, we human are happy to be in our comfort zone most of the time.
Yeah.
And and you need to recognize that sometimes you need to check in and make sure that you are getting the results that you are expecting, and maybe look inward why we are not.
Growth comes when we're outside of the comfort zone.
Yes.
So when we talk about being, great managers, oftentimes, and this is where I've definitely fallen in the past, we gravitate to people that are easier for us to manage, or we can, give them the lead and let them run. There have been times when I haven't been a great manager to somebody who has a different style than I feel comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, that's where the curiosity, that's where the connection, that's where the courage comes in. And the growth comes in for everybody when you're strong enough to make that connection anyway.
Yeah. So I want to talk about coaching now, because that's your activity.
Yeah.
So can you help me understand what is coaching and what I can expect from it?
Coaching. That's a very broad question.
Yes, I know.
Well, coaching in general, whether it's working with a team or working with a person, is about holding somebody up to their highest possibility, even when they don't see it. So it's me looking at a client or looking at a team and believing that they can be way better and they can reach their goals, whatever their goals are. And we definitely spend time establishing those things, even if they don't believe it. And a coach holds somebody to that. It is 100% unselfish, outwardly focused on what that person wants to create or that team wants to create. And is it easy? No way. It's not. Is it easy for the client necessarily? No. Is it 100% focused on the success of the client? Yes. As a coach, I don't tell people the answers.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes
this is what a mentor does. A mentor is going to kind of give you advice based on their experience. Sometimes I give a little advice, sure. Yeah. A really good coach is trained to ask powerful questions that enables the client or the team to think in a new way, or to move in a new way, or to try something new. A coach also, if they're really good, is trained to blurt something out when it's not being said, which usually moves a conversation also. Okay. A coach is trained to challenge somebody to step outside their box. I'm pretty well known at giving homework.
Okay.
But the homework is for a purpose. It is whether it's homework that is about watching the way you play in life for the next 2 weeks, or it's tangible homework. It's always meant to help you learn and grow and get to the place you want to go.
Fair enough. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we are empowered through a coaching relationship, instead of a relationship where I'm just telling you what to do, and you come to your conclusions all by yourself, mm-hmm. you're much more likely to implement them into your life.
Yes.
And to own them and to get to the next level, whatever that is for you.
I like that. So, if somebody is interested in hiring your services, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can start by going to my website,
okay,
thelensleadership.com, or they can go to my LinkedIn and find me. They can track me down on LinkedIn pretty easily. But on my website, there's a button right at the top that offers a complimentary 30-minute just exploratory session where you can share with me what's on your mind. We can, see if we have chemistry. We can talk about what you're interested in a coach, or what your team might be interested in. Or I also do speaking engagements, and I also do facilitation of workshops, experiential workshops.
Okay.
I am not the kind of person who's going to talk at you for an hour. I will always create an experience. So, so go to my website, thelensleadership.com, and you can set up 30 minutes to just talk about what you want to create.
Yeah. So do you take people remotely? I mean, maybe for the
I do.
Yeah, you do.
I do. I was very adamant at the beginning of when I started the Lens Leadership, and I am globally certified with the International Coaching Federation, as well as the very intensive Coactive Training Institute. I was adamant that I stayed global. I've spent 26 plus years working in global organizations. It was incredibly important to me to stay globally connected.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have clients. I have clients in Europe. I have clients in Africa, across the U.S., Canada. Yeah.
Nice.
English speaking.
Yeah, I get. Maybe Italian, you could do it. Yeah.
I could probably do it in Italian. My Italian's a little rusty, but give me 2 weeks and and I'm on board.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you so much for being there today. I mean, and giving all those great advices and experiences. I think we have covered a lot of grounds. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I mean,
well, you told me that you were going to ask me about a book.
Oh,
and it was
yes.
the one and only thing that I actually thought about before I came here.
Yes. So what's that book?
The book that I would recommend for leadership is it's not a leadership book. Huh. It's a biography. It's a biography. It's not a biography. It is Bob Iger's Ride of a Lifetime. Bob Iger being the former and current CEO of Disney.
Oh yeah.
I just ate that book up because I'm so inspired by his style of leadership, his connection with the different groups within the organization, his vision. And vision is so important. Without a vision, we cannot get where we're trying to go. Because, oh, by the way, we don't know where we're trying to go.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
His vision and ability to execute and think outside of the box. And when he reached out to Steve Jobs and built a relationship with Pixar and and when he decided he wanted to bring in Marvel, and when he decided that he wanted to build this platform, Disney Plus, and the execution of all of these things and how all of these, had Star Wars and how it all came together as this next generation Disney.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but Ride of a Lifetime, the book, tells the story of all of these different parts of his career and executing on the next step in this vision. And it's just incredibly inspiring.
Wow.
I mean, okay. I think that there are a few people that I would follow just about anywhere.
He's one of them.
He's definitely one of them. I'm incredibly inspired by the work that he's done. So I think, and I've recommended the book to clients over time, and everybody gets something out of it.
Okay, so next book on the list for me.
Yes,
thank you.
and I think you're gonna love it. Honestly, I mean, just particularly the Pixar part, but and probably the Star Wars part. But when I would love to hear your perspective after.
Sure, I will.
You do read it.
Yeah, I will for sure. Brilliant.
Yeah. That's the one thing I thought about. I'm like, he's going to ask me about a book. What book? Oh, it's Ride of a Lifetime. I didn't have to think too hard because it really is, for me, something that I refer to often.
So the other question I ask is, what other leaders should I have a conversation with?
Okay. You want me to tell you here on...
Or we can take it
Yeah.
offline, but yeah.
Yeah, I there is somebody that I want to introduce you to, completely different, not in tech.
That's fine.
Incredible woman, female leader who has become such a strong ally of mine since we did the Cornell Executive Women's Leadership Program together. And somebody who I've had incredibly curious conversations with, who comes from a completely different walk of life than I do, in the middle of the country. And just immense respect for this person. So I'm looking forward to introducing you. And maybe she can be on another episode of the podcast.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Alison. It was great to have you.
Yes, thank you, Roman.
And maybe we'll meet again in a couple of episodes where you can share more stories.
I'm always happy to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You stayed until the end. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pay It Forward Society. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with at least 2 people who would benefit from this discussion. Your support helps me reach more people and make a greater impact. You can also help me get discovered by leaving a 5-star rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. I appreciate your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you. Bye.